All right, so welcome everyone. If you're someone, maybe fresher or working professional, want to get prepared for your upcoming cybersecurity interview, then this video will definitely help you. I'll take you through 10 most important concepts, the fundamental concept that you should be prepared for before sitting for your next interview. All right. So, if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. And without taking much time, let's get started. All right, so let's talk about the very first concept, which is networking fundamental. Please make sure you be prepared for the entire networking fundamental concept before you set for the interview. First, the interviewer may ask you about what's the difference between TCP and UDP. So start talking by giving them in detail, like what TCP is more reliable, UDP is not so reliable. TCP is used when you want to have a guaranteed delivery. It's require acknowledgement, that's why it's reliable. It's connection oriented. UDP is connection less, there is no acknowledgement. And that's the reason UDP is fast. UDP is used whenever we want to have a transactional message as well, right? So it's not that one cannot be used over the other. UDP is still used whenever you want to broadcast certain message. TCP is used whenever we want to have a guaranteed delivery. And so yeah, that's how you have to talk about it. Next, if they may ask you about what is DNS, how does it work. So talk about DNS, have an analogy of phone book where DNS maintains the database of website and the IP address, and also cover the concept related to how the resolver or name server gets the IP address from a root server, and then it might reach out to the TLD server after that. From there, it will go to the authoritative server, and from there, it will get the IP address to your machine, right? Next, what are some of the common port numbers? So, interviewer may ask you about port number of some protocol. Like some of the most common protocol that they may ask you is HTTP and HTTPS, right? HTTPS. Then they may ask you about FTP port or SSH, or Telnet is no longer used, but make sure you be prepared. RDP ports, MySQL port as well, right? Next, what is three-way handshake? This is very important concept, guys. Make sure you have a clear understanding about it. Start with saying, okay, there will be one client and server. So client send the send message, servers send the acknowledgement with its own SYN, so that becomes SYN ACK. Finally, the client send the acknowledgement, and this completes the three-way handshake. After that, the actual packet will start getting back and forth across both client and server, right? What is OSI model? Make sure you be prepared very clearly, because this is the most asked question in any cybersecurity interview, right? So make sure you talk about all the 7 layers, starting from the physical data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer. What's most important is you have to talk about what other devices works on every layer, and also what protocol works on every layer. Okay, let's move to the next topic, which is operating system fundamentals. Okay, so operating system, you should be prepared about some common questions. The interviewer may ask you about how do you check the processes in Linux, so you can tell about some commands, maybe ps aux minus aux. They may ask you about how to, is there any other command, so you can also talk about top command as well. This works on all the Linux machine. And do you have any experience with PowerShell? You can say yes, and talk about how did you use it. So you can talk about few commands like get command, get service command, or get event log, or get process command, and how did you use it. So maybe you can tell them that I have created simple scripts to execute certain commands, or to create a firewall rules onto the Windows server using PowerShell. Next, how do you check the listening port? So maybe you can use the net, you can tell them about I have used the netstat, tulnp. How do you check the network states in the Linux? So probably the same command, you can tell one over the other, maybe IP routes or ping command and everything to check the network status, right? Next is the security fundamentals, foundational question, right? So in this, the most important, most commonly asked question is CIA triad. Okay, so make sure you talk about it. CIA belongs, I mean, it consists of three concepts: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality means making sure there's no unauthorized access to your data. I stands for integrity. That means there is no unauthorized modification to the data, right? Finally, availability. A stands for availability. That means your data will be available 100% of the time, right? That's a goal. It's not necessary that all the organization will achieve it, but that's a goal for every company. What's the difference between hashing and encryption? Make sure you first define you first give them a definition about what is hashing and what is encryption. You talk about few of the algorithm as well, like SHA-256 for encryption, AES 3DES, AES 256, and then the difference is very important. Hashing is one way. You can actually convert a data into fixed length string by using hashing, but you can't get the original data back, right? But with encryption, you use a key pair, or a key maybe to encrypt the data, and you can use a key to get your data back. So that's possible with encryption, right? And that's the major difference. What is digital certificates, right? So digital certificate is very, very important, because this actually proves that you are the owner of that asset or that website, or this, that product in a way. So that consists of public key and signature as well, right? So every website you visit, maybe Google, Amazon, they have digital certificate. And when your browser start talking to it, the website shows the certificate, and you authenticate, right? I mean, you validate the identity of Amazon.com or Google.com based on that certificate, right? And in the certificate, we have multiple information. We have public key, owner information, CA information, validity period, and if anything is invalid, you get a warning on your web page, right? So this is how you can explain. This shows that you really have some real world experience. You really understand the working piece, right? Then talk about TLS. TLS is what? I mean, TLS is basically transport layer security that ensure that your communication over the internet is encrypted. It achieves the confidentiality. And then you should talk about the TLS handshake. Just the way we have TCP/IP handshake before the actual data can move on, we have TLS handshake where we have a client machine and the server, and there are multiple messages which get exchanged. The client first send the client hellos, where it will send all the information with the supported hello messages version cipher suit, and the server also send its own hello as well. So server hellos, where it's share its own digital certificates with public key and everything. And there is a list of messages which get exchanged. Make sure you remember at least the name of the message from the certificate validation, key exchange, master key generation. So you should know about what's really happened on every message exchange. Here the interviewer might not ask you more detail, but if you at least know about the messages, interviewer will understand, okay, you really curious to learn about technology, right? Next, some security foundational questions. Is It's not heavily asked or regularly asked, but make sure you be prepared. Least privilege. So it's a concept for saying that give the permission to any user which is enough to get the work done, right? Not more than that. That's the least privilege principle. Let's say there is a developer, and I want to create a authorization policies to allow access to certain servers. So I will create a policy in such a way that the developer can only access that three servers, not more than that, right? So that's called least privilege principle. Next, move to the next concept, which is network security concept. It's again very important concept. In this, the first point is the stateful and stateless firewall. It's very commonly asked question. Stateful means every firewall will maintain a connection table. What? a connection table. Connection table is where the firewall maintain the database of all the session. Whenever the packet crosses that firewall, it maintain an entry that these packet came in here, and it will maintain the TCP state. So whenever the return traffic comes back from the firewall, it will verify if it is a response to the existing connection or the entry, or is it a new one. If it is a response to the existing packet itself as a part of three-way handshake, if you remember, I told you SYN, SYNAC, and ACK, then it will be allowed by default. In case of stateless, you have to create a bidirectional rule for packet, going from inside to out and coming from outside to inside, right? So you don't have to do that in stateful. So that's the reason it's more secure, and it maintains the state, and that's a benefit. Nowadays, all the firewall that you see, these are all stateful. That's how you have to explain. Remember, what is next generation firewall? Talk about next generation firewall has a lot of capability in terms of deep packet inspection. They have app ID inspection, they have user ID integration. This is all with the almost all the firewalls now have it, right? You take Palo Alto, you take Cisco FTD appliances, you take FortiGate or any firewall, they have this capability of application inspection, deep packet inspection, SSL decryption, IPS rules, IDS, DLP policy, antivirus rule, anti-spyware rules. So make sure you have a note of it. What's the difference between IPS and IDS? Very, very common. IDS, it's the intrusion detection system which detect the threats, and then it alert to the admin to take up appropriate action. But in the IPS, but with the IPS, it can detect, and it can also prevent it from getting into the network, right? So it won't wait for the admin to take action. But you may wonder, I mean, just an insight, you may wonder, then why do I need IVDS then, right? This can be a counter question from the interviewer. So make sure you tell them that there are in the real world, when you start creating a policy from the day one, you might not be sure if if it should be blocked or not, because it might lead to a problem in production. If you create certain rule, it might block by mistake, and your actual business as usual will be disrupted. So in the beginning, you create an IDS rule, and then once you're sure, you convert into the IPS rule as well. It could also possible with the ideas, you get more, you need more human intervention, so you have more visibility as well. IPS won't depend on the human. It's just like your antivirus, it won't ask you whether to block this file or not, it just do that, right? So in that case, it get the work done. It gets it done. Next, we have for cyber attack and malware basics. So in this, there are a lot of concept which is very important. What is phishing? So phishing is very commonly asked question. Fraudulent email messages that might steal your data, your bank account is locked, click here, and all those stuff. So phishing is it's basically target the human behavior. Okay, create scarcity and then lead you to click on certain link, and might take some information from you. Okay, then the interviewer may ask you about the difference between virus, worms, and trojan. So that's quite easy. Just remember, just talk about what's the core, how does it work, and everything. Okay, next, brute force attack. What is brute force attack? Brute force is all about trying unique multiple password by attacker, maybe dictionary as well, to guess the password, right? Ransomware. What is ransomware? Ransomware is it's a kind of a malware itself, where it actually encrypts all the file of the victim machine and asks for a ransom amount in bitcoin. Against that, the attacker will give you, or hacker will give you, the key which can be used to decrypt your file and get the access to your file back, right? Next, social engineering. This is also very important. Social engineering is a technique which is similar to the phishing, where it manipulates the people to give them an access. So maybe fake ID support asking for an OPT. Oh, sorry, OPT, not OPT, OTP, one-time password, right? So this is social engineering, right? Then DDoS attack. DDoS attack is also very commonly asked question. where there can be a victim server, let's say here, okay, and there are multiple computer or a system compromised by the hacker group, maybe sitting here, and all these are compromised IoT devices or CCTV camera or maybe laptop mobile devices. They might launch an attack to this victim machine, right? In order to give you the definition, it's very simple. In DDoS attack, the victim machine get bombarded with a huge number of fake traffic so that it won't be able to serve the genuine request. That's called denial of service. And when this attacks is initiated from multiple locations, it's called distributed denial of service attack. That's what DDoS is, right? Next, SIM and logging. Make sure you talk about your SIM experience. This is where you can tell them if you haven't worked in the real world before. So you can talk about I have worked in setting up the Splunk SIM in my experience. I've worked in setting up the Elastic. I worked in setting up the Elastic, or if some of you have done with Wazoo, so you can talk about it, or maybe IBM QRadar. So you have worked in setting up the Splunk SIM from scratch. You have worked in installing some apps, created some custom dashboard as well. Next, they may ask you about have you created or what is correlation rules. So correlation rules are basically rules that combines multiple events to detect any advanced threat. So maybe the correlation rule can be 10 failed login and one success login happen from the same IP address, then that can be a brute force attack attempt, right? So maybe the 10 failed login happen and then all of a sudden there is a success from a new geolocation, then that can be a possible brute force attack attempt, right? SIM rule use cases. Make sure you talk about few rule cases. For example, lateral movement, or how do you detect lateral movement? How did you create that SPL query? Before the interview, make sure you know about few Splunk commands. It can be it can be top command, table command, and stats command, geom function, and yeah. So these are some of the most popular one that you can take a note of. Next, we have security tools. It They might not ask you a lot, and this cannot be a decision making, but make sure you know about it. Know about all the vulnerability tools, including Nessus, which is now Tenable, Qualys, Rapid 7. You should know about Nmap. It doesn't matter if you're going for a blue team or SOC analyst role. Make sure you know about Nmap tool. How does it work? How do you run the Nmap? That's simple. Wireshark is very important, very important tool. Make sure you know about it. How to capture certain traffic. So few command you should know about it, right? IP address command, IP ADDR, and then what did you do with the Wireshark? So you can talk about I have used the Wireshark to see if the TCP three-way handshake happened, if the to decrypt the TLS packet if it is locally on your machine and you have the key available for that. And also talk about if you have worked in some open source tool like Wazoo or Velociraptor, or maybe OS query, right? So talk about these tools. This is very important. Next, incident basics. So make sure you talk about some incident response or some basic thing. Again, it might not be a tiebreaker, but remember decision making stuff. But make sure you know about it. What is alert triage? It's basically sorting the alert to identify if it's a real alert or it's a false positive, right? False positive means it's a false alarm, right? It's not a real threat. So they may ask you about some of the common IOCs, the indicator of compromise. So talk about malicious IP address, malicious IP, suspicious hash file, or malicious domain into the network, or some process name in the system. So this could be the indicator of compromise, which says that signs of attack, that signs that your system is compromised, right? How would you respond to a DDoS attack? That's again a very commonly asked question. Make sure you say that by saying that you identify the traffic pattern. Even if you haven't worked, just make sure how what would you do, right? This can be a scenario based question. Identify the traffic sources, then probably you can blacklist some top 10 or 20 IP address on the firewalls or on the web application firewall, and then you can enable a rate limiting, right? What is that? A rate limiting. So you enable the rate limiting, and then you work with your service provider or CDN like Akamai or Encapsula, or maybe your service provider to block those traffic, right? Number 9 is security engineering. Although this again, this is plus. If you know it, you have a plus. You have an edge over the other, right? So you should know about zero trust framework. Zero trust says that never trust anybody, always verify. Even if it is a request coming in internally, you should verify, you should not trust. And it has got multiple foundational layer as well. We have network segmentation, we have least privilege principle, we have visualization, analytics, endpoint, user, everything comes into the picture. So that's zero trust. Remember, never trust, always verify. That's a principle of it. Yeah, defense in depth. Now, defense in depth says that there has to be a multiple layer of security. One layer is not enough. So in this case, basically what happened is you talk about different layers can be used in between. So on at the top we have a perimeter layer where, I mean, in the multiple layers on the in the network of security. So on the top we have perimeter where the firewall might work, IPS, IDS may work, a web filter may work. In the between, the next layer can be a network security layer where the VLAN segmentation, zero trust, firewall rules will work. I mean, maybe secondary network layer firewall will work. Endpoint security comes inside. Then we have application security. Then we have data security. So that's this structure of defense is called defense and depth, right? Then we have DMZ architecture. Now, DMZ is used because it's a zone for public facing services. So, whenever you have a data center, let's say you have a data center in here, and you allow the users or any user globally want to access to your servers in your network itself, you create a separate zone for that. That's called demilitarized zone, right? So that's where you make sure your web servers, your databases are there, but you restrict the access to your internal network, right? And that's called DMZ. Network segmentation, it's a very, very important concept for zero trust, which says that your network should be segmented into smaller pieces so that if something happen in one zone, it should not impact the other zone. Also, if someone if even if your one segment get compromised, the attacker should not be able to perform the lateral movement to another zone, right? Next is the least privilege architecture, that says that the user or services get minimum access required, so much so that it should be enough to get the work done. That's it, right? Next, security compliances. It's not, again, not must, but it's good if you know about it. If you're interviewing for the financial company or healthcare company in US, or maybe any specific company, you should know about those compliance. It's not as important to know about all the requirement, but at least know the fundamentals. PCIDSs, it's made by the payment card security standards. Any banks, any organization, in fact, for that matter, if they either accept, store, or process the credit card information, they have to follow PCIDSs. You can answer this way. You can make your answer very, very specific like this. HIPAA compliance. If any healthcare body in United States, they store the patient data, they have to follow the HIPAA compliance. SOC 2 compliances, it's for any service provider that handles the customer data online, maybe they have to follow SOC 2 compliance. It can be applicable for any SaaS company, right? Any software as a service company, right? So we have ISO 27001 company that is done by the International Standard for Information Security Management, ISMS. And you can tell them that it's provide company build the ISMS to meet the different guideline. They create their own policy, security policy based on that. GDPR is applicable for any businesses which is serving their customer, who's serving their customer in European region. They have to follow the GDPR compliance. Finally, NIST CSF cybersecurity framework. That's not a compliance; it's a framework which is used to which has multiple layers into it for risk management, for identify, protect, detect, respond as well. So you should have an understanding about it. And if you have any question about any of the topic, do let me know in the comment section. I would love to help you out. Thank you.